Hi guys, my name is Ethan Lewis, and I am a current senior at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I am completing my BS in mathematical statistics.
And hello, my name is Cindy, and I'm also a senior at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I'm double majoring in statistics and computer science. And first of all, I would like to welcome you all to this graduate school info session. And we have 3 panelists for today's grad school info session. They are Shaina Mitchell, an assistant professor at Northwestern University. And we also have Anarina Murillo, a visiting professor at NYU. And we have Jose Toledo, a PhD student at UCLA. And they will briefly introduce themselves and then field questions from the audience.
Yes, and before we hand it over to our speakers, I just want to remind you that you can post any questions you have in the Q&A box. And if you see any questions that interest you, you can also upvote them and we'll pass them along to the panelists. So now I'm going to hand it over to Shaina.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So as Cindy said, I'm Shaina. Alexandria is how you'll find me online. And I am a new assistant professor at Northwestern University. There's kind of an intense hierarchy to describe my job. So I'm at Northwestern University, but I'm in Feinberg School of Medicine. Within that, I'm in the Department of Preventive Medicine. And within that, I'm in the Department of Biostatistics, or the Division of Biostatistics. There's also a Biostatistics Collaboration Center that I'm affiliated with as well. So that's sort of my location within the university. So just, I guess, a couple of quick things about me. So I just finished my PhD in biostatistics at UNC Chapel Hill. So great to see these panelists from North Carolina representing. And I did my undergrad at Carnegie Mellon University, which is in Pittsburgh, in mathematical sciences and statistics. Right now, a lot of my work is focused in cardiovascular disease epidemiology and sleep. I'm also really interested in nutrition. And I, of course, have statistical interests as well in causal inference and exposure mixtures, which is what my thesis was on. And I can go into more detail in that if that's interesting, but for now, I'll pass it along.
So I can go next. So hi, my name is Anarina Murillo. I'm excited to be here, and I thank the organizers for inviting me here. This is my first eUSR conference, so I'm really excited to be here. So currently I am visiting faculty in the Department of Biostatistics at New York University in the School of Global Public Health. I had kind of a long way before I got here. So I completed my undergraduate and PhD in Arizona State University. I'm originally from California. And then I moved after Arizona, I went to Alabama. I did a postdoc in statistical genetics and obesity there for 3 years. And then I made my way up north and then went to Brown. And I was there for about 2.5 years or so, where I worked as a statistician, mainly in pediatrics at the Children's Hospital there. And I worked with a lot of students and residents there. And I really enjoyed all the collaborative work that I did, mainly in primary care, also in obesity and cardiovascular. So I'm happy to see that Shaina and I have similar research interests. And after I had that experience, I really missed working with students. And so I had the opportunity this summer to go to NYU. So I'm excited to be here. I do a lot of work in health disparities, so it's a perfect fit to be in New York and to engage in teaching in my research. And so I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to talking with all of you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jose Toledo. This is my first time attending this conference. I actually didn't hear about it in my undergrad years, but it's good to know that this exists. A little about me, I went to Cal State Fullerton for my bachelor's in statistics, and I was in the process of applying to PhDs, and I got rejected by all of them. So I did my master's degree at Cal State Fullerton, and I reapplied again, and I got into UCLA. So this is my first year at UCLA. I could give a little bit of kind of like, if you want to know what happens, you know, if you don't get a direct path to a PhD program, what you could do within that time. So that's a little bit about me. My research interest is in design of experiments. So that's why I went to UCLA to work with Professor Hong Xin Shu. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I just want to remind everyone to post questions that you have in the Q&A box and we'll pass them along. But I guess our first question, we can start with Jose. You kind of touched on it a little bit. I guess what would you say are the major differences between applying and also the stuff that you do within a PhD versus a master's program?
Okay, yeah, that's so when you're in your last year of your bachelor's degree, you usually want to apply to a PhD program. The main benefits for doing that is because most PhD programs give you funding. So that's one of the main benefits of doing a PhD. I wouldn't say doing a master's was a waste of time. It really wasn't. It was actually a kind of like a blessing in disguise. So I was very, disheartened. I was like, I have a very high GPA. I got above average scores on, the GREs. I did undergraduate research. I went to conferences such as SACNAS and JSM, JMM. So I was very active as an undergraduate. So I was, checking off the list, and I was like, well, how come I didn't get into a school PhD program? So during the master's degree, I was a teacher for 2 years at Cal State Fullerton. I completed the master's courses, and that's all you pretty much do. You just take courses your 2 years, and that's about it. There's no funding, at least for most master's programs. So the teaching is optional. I did that as kind of like a job. I applied to be a TA. The difference between a TA, kind of like at a UC and like a Cal State, is that you're actually in control of the whole class. So I was teaching college algebra, pre-calculus, statistics, probability, and things like that for 2 years. So I got teaching experience. On top of that, during the 2 years, I got a couple publications out, and I think that's what strengthened my application for the following PhD round. So it's kind of like a risk that you need to take, because if you don't get accepted to a single PhD, you have to wait a whole entire year to reapply again. And if you reapply again without doing anything that year and you get rejected, well, now you have to wait another year. So now you've extended it to 2 years. So that's why I decided to do a master's program and just say, you know what, I'm going to do 2 years and then reapply again. So in conclusion, master's degree, you just take courses and that's it. For a PhD program, since I did a master's degree, I'm not really kind of stressed about the classes, because most of the material I've seen, at least in this first quarter, has been review. So I'm not that stressed out. I do the homework a couple hours before, and I just look at old books or old notes, and I'm like, oh, I did that already. But I will say that it is a lot of work. You go from, in the master's program, you go just taking 2 classes in a semester setting versus 3 classes in a quarter setting. So I could see why my classmates are very stressed out. It's a lot of work. Most of the time, the professors, they give you enough information, but you have to read a lot on your own on top of doing, 3 classes, and homework. All homework is due kind of like Friday. And as soon as you turn in all your homework assignments, you get an email saying that the next homework's up. And it's a lot of work, I would say. If I hadn't done the master's program, I would be kind of stressing out about it, really, because it is very tough. So that's my insight. So in conclusion, I really don't regret doing the master's degree, and it's not a bad path to take in case that you don't get accepted into a PhD program directly from a bachelor's degree.
Awesome answer. Thank you, Jose. So our next question might be related to the graduation program selection. So I know lots of similar graduate programs like data science, biostatistics, and statistics. So how did you go about choosing the types of graduate programs you apply to?
Is that for anyone, or is there someone in particular you were wondering?
For anyone, because I know all of you have the similar background about biostatistics, so you all are welcome to answer this question.
I think I'll just go ahead and go first. I have the feeling I'm a little older than Jose, so I think my perspective is that data science programs were extremely new and not numerous and not, I guess, necessarily held in really high regard when I was looking for graduate programs. So I was really deciding between statistics and biostatistics programs. For me, I am really interested in collaborative research. That's what drove me to go to graduate school, and that's what I'm doing now. For anyone who has, and who knows like kind of what a professor job is, I actually am in a non-tenure role, which really means that my job is incredibly collaborative, which is just not true of everyone who is a professor in statistics or biostatistics. So to me, choosing the biostatistics route was the easiest way to stay really tied to data applications. And I was very interested in health science and research. So I applied almost exclusively to biostatistics programs. I think the one statistics program I applied to was NC State, which is very biostat heavy anyways. So that's sort of, a little asterisks on that.
Yeah, I would just add that I think there's so much diversity in programs, and even within like data science programs across different schools, or if they're in the medical school versus the School of Public Health or the College of Letters and Arts and Sciences or Liberal Arts and Sciences. So there's so much variability in like a single program like biostatistics or data science, depending on where it's housed. And so I like what Shaina said about how she kind of knew what she was interested in, what she wanted in terms of like the research she wanted to do and the kind of work and collaborations she wanted. And so she found like a good fit for that. I think, and I also appreciated what Jose said about just his experiences in the master's and PhD program, because I think like for a master's program, there are some programs where you go through the master's and then continue on with the PhD. And so if you're in a terminal master's program, they're preparing you mainly to go on the market. So you won't take a lot of theoretical courses. You might have some electives where you could take theoretical courses or maybe machine learning and more advanced like data science courses. But it really depends, like every program is so different. And then for the PhD program, you're expected to do your own dissertation work. So you're kind of getting different training to get the skills to do that. And it's a 5-year process, whereas a master's typically 2 years. Some require a thesis, some don't. There's just so much variability. So I agree with both of the responses and knowing sort of what you want to do. And if you don't know, doing internships, working with a professor to get research experience, I think that helps you find what you like and don't like in terms of like theory and application, and what kind of application. Is it environmental health? Is it ecology? Is it medicine? Is it neuroscience? And then also like what kind of faculty member do you want to be? Do you want to be on a non-tenure or tenure? If academia is what you want to do, maybe you want to work for the NSA, I don't know. And so there's so many different options. And so I think there's a lot of variability. I guess I would encourage students to, do research at the university they're interested in, and if there's like a information session, I would encourage them to attend that, as well as reached out to like the graduate program directors or students. I have students reach out to me all the time, just asking about what it's like, being at the institution that I'm in. So I would encourage students to not be afraid to reach out to people, even people you're meeting here at this conference, to just get more information about the program. So I'll just add that.
I think that's great. And that I just wanted to follow up briefly on that, what you were saying about different environments. So programs based in a school of medicine versus based in a school of public health, or just kind of free floating programs. I think that made a difference to me as well. And really considering who I wanted to be able to be in close contact with. I think, I was able to take classes in epidemiology and in nutrition because I was in a school of public health. And it was very easy to register for those classes, very easy to work with professors in those departments on projects. So I think that was really valuable for me. So if, students can figure out what they might be interested in, I think as well. I did, as I mentioned, I did my PhD at UNC, and I actually did an internship at UNC before then. So I got a sense of the work environment there, who I might be working with, and what their interests were. So I think that really helped me to pick UNC, because I felt like I understood the interests of the professors, and that they really were collaboratively minded, which is just not the impression that I got everywhere. So I think definitely do your research, cold email people. It's my favorite thing to do. Or if you can go to info sessions, just talking to people, I think is really helpful, making a really informed decision.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So I guess building off of the points of doing your research into various schools, we can get a little bit into the application process. So do you guys have any tips on making a grad school application stand out? When should students really be thinking about making those applications? And I know you guys have touched on the specific grad programs. Should students just be sending applications to the specific grad programs they're interested in, or should they cast a wide net and go from there?
I'll start off just because I recently did the process. So first I would recommend doing an REU if you're a junior or a sophomore. Really, there's varying levels of REUs. REUs are research experience for undergraduates. I did one in Oregon, and that's in statistics. So if you don't know like exactly what research you kind of want to do, REUs are a good place to start. So after that, that's kind of like one big thing that I would recommend to strengthen your application is doing research during your undergrad. The process is, you have to do GREs. Most statistics, I'm just going to speak on statistics because I only applied for statistics programs. Most don't ask for the subject GRE. They just want the general. So basic math and English. The GRE for the math subject one is a lot tougher, but most statistics departments don't ask for that. There's some that do, but most don't. So that's that. Just study for the GRE. Do not take it without studying for it. So I would study for that, maybe starting in the beginning of the fall, in the summer if you have time, but plan to at least study for it at least a month or two beforehand, at least for the general. The subject's a lot tougher, so study a lot more for that. Personal statements, you have to ask with time. So give the professors, hopefully you have some personal relationship with professors in your school. 3 at least. Most applications ask for 3 references. So make sure that you have a close relationship with at least 3. You don't want to ask someone who you took a class and you got an A. Sure, they'll probably write you a letter. It's not going to be the best. It's going to be a very kind of like a template letter that, yeah, they did well in my class and they're, an overachiever and so on. But you really want to have some personal relationship with a professor, whether it be doing research or working with them, independent study and so on, just to have better letters of recommendations from their side. Your letter that you have to write, your personal statement and statement of purpose. Again, this goes back to having a personal relationship with one of your professors and asking them if they can give you feedback on it and maybe make some edits or recommendations on your writing. Because I would say the letter is very important, especially the statement of purpose and personal statements on your side is much more important than your GRE scores, I would say. Other than that, you should start applying. I think the applications begin in September and you have till December, summer, January, early January. And it's a very stressful process during those few months because you're about to graduate, and then you have to do the GRE, personal statements, personal this and that. So it's a very busy time. So I wouldn't take it very lightly. Try to apply to at least, I don't know, 8 or so. The first time I applied to 10. So that kind of gives you an idea of how many you have to apply to and how many you could get rejected from. So other than that, that's pretty much the process, I would say, for getting into PhD program.
I can go next. I think some of the things that I recall and that I think are important from the search committee perspective, that personal statement, I know it's a drag, but really trying to make it specific to the school, demonstrating that you know what resources the school has and that those are incredibly appropriate for your personal career and research goals. I think specifically, I think I'm specifically talking about PhD programs here. But for example, if you're really interested in cancer research and you're applying somewhere that has a cancer center, mention that, mention the professors that you would work with and that, why cancer research is interesting to you, what skills you need to develop in order to do this research. I think all of that is really important in that personal statement, kind of motivating why you are interested in field blank, maybe it's biostatistics, and then why this university has the resources for you to develop as a researcher in that area. And I think some of it is a little formulaic, if you are interested in cancer, maybe you have, your kind of standard cancer paragraph and you just switch out the names of the cancer centers at different universities or something like that. But just making sure that you do take care to convey to the committee that you know what is happening at the institution and what the institution's priorities are, I think can go a long way. And I think to what Jose was saying, the reference letters as well. If you can do research with someone, they can write you a really strong letter. Often undergraduate research is pretty one-on-one. So you'll have a relationship with whoever it is that you were doing research with, and they can actually speak to how you perform as a researcher and how you've grown over the course of this project that you were doing with them. And that's going to be, that's the end goal of a PhD really is to be a rigorous researcher, well, for statistics, at least in biostatistics. So anyone who can, convey information about that, maybe it's not all three, like Jose was saying, maybe one person who's like, well, this person got an A in my class, they were always there, they clearly know what they're doing, would be enough. But at least one, perhaps two, if you can, of people who can really speak to you as a student and as a researcher.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think your personal letter and your letters of recommendation are very important because it's an opportunity for others to speak about you that's beyond your resume or your CV and your transcript. And your personal statement, you definitely want to show your enthusiasm and passion about why that program is a good fit for you. And I want to add to what Jose and Shaina said, that if you're a student that hasn't had the opportunity to do research experience, I know that some universities don't have research opportunities, or maybe because of COVID, there were limited opportunities to do an REU online this past summer. I would suggest that if there's anyone else that could maybe speak of you outside the classroom, like if you've done any math tutoring, a lot of us come from degrees in math or computer science. So if you've done any online tutoring or just math tutoring in general, or if you, let's say, like Shaina said, you want to do cancer research, if you volunteered in a cancer center or the American Cancer Society or something like that, maybe that's like your motivation, your passion for wanting to do data science, but with applications in cancer. So you can also mention that, and then you could also request letters in that space. And as well as internships too. I wouldn't discount the internships. If you've done an internship like at a company, it's an industry job, those are still skills that you're getting outside of the classroom. Like you're applying things you've learned in class in a real world setting where you're working on projects, you have timelines, you have real hands-on experience with data. Those are also valuable skills that you're getting. So I wouldn't discount like non-academic experiences that, that could strengthen your portfolio. But yeah, just to emphasize again, what Shaina and Jose mentioned, definitely spend a good time on your personal statement. I've had several people read my personal statements. So if there's like an advisor, someone, or even a career center or writing center, I would definitely encourage you to take advantage of those campus resources and have somebody read your personal statement and give you feedback. And it's up to you on, what you want to incorporate in the end, but definitely use your resources and making that personal statement as best as it can be, because it's very valuable for the graduate application. So.
Awesome, thank you. And we get a question from Bohan Wu, and the question is, what is the difference between personal statement and statement of purpose?
I will just say I do not recall. I think sometimes different programs just call them different things. And I think even speaking from like job search, I had like 4 different versions of really the same document, but some needed more of a teaching emphasis and some needed, more of a whatever emphasis. So I think it might come down to different versions of the same thing or just different names. But I think Jose, since you just went through it, you might have a better perspective.
Yeah. So, yeah, it depends on the school. Some schools is just one. The most that I applied to were 2. So personal statement is your background, any sort of difficulties that you had as an undergraduate student, any circumstances that may or may not that may affect you in your studies. So that's more of a personal statement. How did you get here? What do you plan? How did you overcome those challenges, and what do you plan on doing to continue on this path? Statement of purpose is why you want to go to this school. What's your research interest? What do you plan on getting out of this PhD program? So 2 different papers. Sometimes I would just write one big one, and if they ask for 2, I would just cut it in half. It's like, it's kind of like a story. You're telling your background. This is who I am, and then you get more to the academic setting, and this is what I want to do. This is what I want to study. I want to become a professor, and so on. And sometimes it was just a matter of putting one paragraph into another if I had to split it into 2 papers. So it was just writing one big paper. But again, the statement of purpose should be unique to the school. The personal statement could be like a template. Write a really good personal statement. Most schools ask the same questions, like your background and this and that. But the statement of purpose should be tailored to the specific school, and try to avoid, you could tell when something's a template or not. And for the statement of purpose, you should really try to make it unique to that school and show them that you really want to be there and what you're bringing to the table. So that's my take on difference between personal statement and statement of purpose.
Just one thing to Jose's point, like ask for a template. Like if you have friends who've applied to grad school, or even us, I'm not certain I could unearth my grad school application information, but ask for examples. I think I'm still doing that now, like for applying to jobs, I asked for examples. And I think it's really helpful to see examples of how people have approached this, how people have told this story, what they're including in different statements, and what their, what their impressions were of what needed to be done for different schools. I think get as many examples as you can.
Awesome, great answers. So now I guess let's step back a little further from the application process, more into the specific grad programs. I know all of you have touched on your experiences both learning and working wise within your respective programs. But I guess if any of you have some major challenges that you encountered in your graduate program, especially compared to your undergraduate experience, or vice versa of that, how did your undergraduate experience really help prepare you for your graduate school?
I'll start off with just the undergrad was, I did math for undergrad. It was concentration and probability and statistics though, but it was like half math, half probability and statistics. The undergrad, it wasn't that bad. I was a decent math student. So it depends who you are. I will say that the master's program was very tough. The classes were very hard. Especially the first year. So do expect that the classes in at least in the master's program, to be very difficult. And like I was saying earlier, like the classes in the PhD program, I would say they're much harder than what I did in my master's program, just because you're comparing like a Cal State to a UC. But it was the same material, so I already saw the material beforehand in the master's program. So now that I'm learning it again, I'm appreciating it more. I have a deeper understanding of the material. I know what I do know and what I don't know. So it's not as difficult as it should be. But I will say that the classes are very tough, at least in this statistics program at UCLA. So do expect to collaborate with your classmates a lot. You don't have to be best friends or anything like that, but at least try to get some sort of study group going, just so you survive. At least the first year, because the first year is just classes. After that, you just have to worry about if the school has like qualifying exams and things like that. But the first year is primarily classes, and then after that, it's just going to be research for the most part.
I can go next. I think the hurdle that I found most significant in grad school, I mean, like most significant, I think from a career and grad school perspective, was I feel as though everyone sort of has a threshold for statistical theory. Some people, care about it to the point of like what you would learn in undergrad, and that is really as much as they care about theory, and you can get a great job doing that. And some people like really kind of tap out at the end of what would be covered by a master's curriculum, in which case like get a master's people have great jobs and they get paid pretty well, like there's nothing wrong with getting a master's. I feel like people knock on that a lot, and I think that there's a really important role for master's level statisticians in everywhere. So I think it's also worth thinking hard about whether you want to be someone who's conducting and proposing research, because I think that's really the PhD step. But what I'll say is the PhD was a long time, and I tapped out before it was over on like kind of how much I cared about theory, and that was really a struggle. It was really hard to sort of stay motivated and committed to doing this PhD, which was very hard. It was grueling. It's extremely isolating to be working on a thesis project where you're really the only person who cares about it. Your advisor cares somewhat, but certainly a lot less than you. It's not their whole focus or a lot of their time. And while some people I think would say find a thesis project that you're really interested in, and I do think that that's compelling, and that's certainly what I did, interest is not enough. You also have to find something like really attainable. So I think, I don't know, I think like kind of a stick-to-itiveness is really helpful. Finding people who you can confide in, also really helpful. So whether it's people in your program, in your cohort, find a network, find people who are further along with you in the program. I know I had some like academic big brothers who, if I was like, I do not know what I'm doing, I do not know why I'm still here, I could reach out to them and they'd be like, oh, I remember this phase, like here are some ways to get through it. That was probably the most critical thing that I leaned on during that period. And now I am in a job where I'm doing exactly as much theory as I would like. So I think it's, there's a mismatch there. Some people, would do a postdoc to learn more, and that just was not my journey. So I think everyone sort of has a different path here and a different level at which they care about developing new theory. And I'd say like, don't let that get in the way of you getting a PhD. Also worth figuring out through, like if you get some interviews at different grad schools and there's like a student, a current student session or something like that, go see if they're happy, see, what they're working on. And if they feel like their needs are being met, I think that's a really critical component too. And I don't think that you'd find that everywhere.
Yeah, thank you. And just a quick reminder, we have about like 10 minutes before we wrap up the meeting. So we probably can do 1 or 2 more questions. And the next question would be, what would you like give some like final suggestion to those senior students or junior students who want to pursue a graduate program?
I'll make a comment. Kind of building off of what Jose and Shaina mentioned earlier. So I would say I teach a lot of master's students right now, and I would say that I agree with Shaina that both master's and PhD programs, and as well as Jose, that both are challenging. The coursework I think is challenging. I think for me that was a big transition going from undergrad to grad school, and just the coursework. It's just a different mentality. It's just we go more in depth in graduate school, and there's less less hand holding of like, these are the things that you need to know. It's just a different process, I would say. So it's definitely challenging for both master's and PhD level. So definitely I would encourage graduate students when they're, or prospective graduate students, when they're looking at programs, in addition to looking at the program itself, I would look at the community and the department. Can you envision yourself, in this school? And I would ask the students to think about, can you see yourself finding peers to work with? Because I think in graduate school, a lot of the problems are require collaborative peer support to do some of the problems, the homework problems. And I would also say that just as much as it is to work really well in school, it's also important to be able to live in that environment. So if you are investing 2 years in a master's program, it's probably less risk than spending somewhere for 5 years for a PhD program. So making sure that you could actually live in that city and in that state, I think is really important. And I think, yeah, I would encourage, I think, just, to have, I think it's important to have balance. In a graduate program, it's easy to get very stressed out with the research and the courses. So making sure that you could also live happily in that city, I think is important. And then also I would encourage students to think about some departments, not all, but some departments have information about where graduates go. So if they have information about, jobs that their students go to afterwards, and any other kind of activities I think are helpful. Like if there's journal clubs or career panels offered at the department, I think that's helpful for your professional development. So you also want to do homework on what kind of professional development opportunities are in those graduate programs that I'm looking at. So I would encourage students to think about those things as they're searching for different programs.
I think a couple of things to consider. The list can be quite long of potential places that you're applying. So I think what Anarina was saying of really figuring out what would be a good fit for you, even before you apply. What places would you be unwilling to live, or are there places that just aren't doing the work that's interesting to you? That's important to know ahead of time. I think in your last year, certainly thinking about what would go into your personal statement or statement of purpose. I think I spent a long time kind of thinking about how I would frame that and what is important, and running that by professors as well. You kind of have a draft, is this something, what in here is relevant? I think that's important as well. I mean, take time to make sure that you're healthy as well. I think senior year is really stressful, especially if you're, studying for a GRE and applying to grad schools. You're maybe visiting places, you're still doing finals. One, sort of nuts and bolts component. Some schools care about some of your grades. I think some schools will care what you got in real analysis, for example. And I think if you have someone that you can ask, some professor that you trust and who's familiar with this process, actually look at, your undergraduate advisor or something, look at your transcript and say okay, what here could be a weakness? What would need to be explained, in a sentence, in a personal statement, or is there another class that I can take that would make me more competitive for this? Would it be worth taking this again? Or maybe if you're, in real analysis, in a semester, maybe take one fewer class or something like that, if that score is going to be really important. So I think, stay well-rounded and stay happy, and also just start early with planning for all of this so that you can get a lot of feedback and it doesn't feel super overwhelming in December.
I'll add on to that things about grades. In your undergrad, you kind of have to worry about your grades more than in graduate school. Once you're in graduate school, you shouldn't be making a priority of, oh, I need to get an A in this class. Obviously do good in the classes, try to aim for at least the B plus, things like that. But you're there to get a deeper understanding of the subject. You're probably going on a path of either teaching those classes in the future or applying those methods, whether it be in industry. So to not stress up about always getting A's in the graduate courses. Do your best, but you know, it's not top priority, I would say. I see some people only worrying about getting A's in their classes and know very little going out of them. Just trying to maximize the score on an exam is not for graduate school.
All right, so as Cindy mentioned, we are coming close on time. We've got about 3 minutes left. I'm not sure if we have any more questions in the Q&A, let alone time to answer any of the questions we have here. So I guess we're unfortunately out of time for this Q&A session, but I believe I speak on behalf of everyone when I say thank you to our panelists for their time, their information, sharing their experiences. And additionally, we'd like to thank our conference sponsors, the American Statistical Association, the Consortium for the Advancement of Undergraduate Statistics Education, and our studio as well. Thank you guys again. Enjoy the remainder of the conference and have a nice day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Oh, and just a note to students on the call, if you can find me online, Shaina, Alexandria, and you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Happy to answer any questions that people might have.